Hello, and welcome to the Weird Waves podcast. My name is Taylor, and this is episode 37. On this week's episode, we are talking to Tyler Spence. He is a kiteboard enthusiast and instructor from Stoke Riders, based here in Indiana. This is an awesome podcast episode. We talk all about kiteboarding, how we got into it, the dynamics of kiteboarding, all the different ways that you can use a kite. I didn't even know kite surfing, kite buggy, kite skis on a longboard. It's really cool. And we also talk about kind of the nuances between surfing and kiteboarding and what those major differences would be if you wanted to give it a try. Andre and I actually had a lesson with Tyler about 3 years ago, and hearing his story again made me really want to try it another time. It's really cool to hear about a sport that is so different from traditional surfing, and yet the thrills are so similar. So I really hope that you enjoy this week's episode.
Great. Cool. So how are you?
Pretty good.
Awesome.
I just got done doing a little kite buggy action. So it was fun. Good direction for it.
What is a kite buggy?
It's a trike. It has 3 wheels on it. The seat is really low to the ground, and your steering wheel is basically your feet. There's pegs that come out of the front wheel, and you're just attached to a kite like a normal kiteboarding setup. But you sit down in the buggy and you steer with your feet, so you can get the angle you need to zip around and cruise the coastline.
So you're like on the beach in like a little cart.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Like a grown-up tricycle, I guess you could call it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you can really like kite kind of in any, it kind of translates to a lot of different sports, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you could call it. Yeah, different activities for it. Snow kiting and land kiting would be the buggy, or land boarding. You have like a mountain board that you can kite with. And then for snow kiting, you have you can use skis, snow blades, snowboard, backcountry skis, all kinds of different modes of transportation. As long as you can like get an edge in, an angle, and have direction and steering, then you can really kite with anything.
That's cool. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like every once in a while, you can fit someone else on the back of the buggy, and you can just like drop them off somewhere if it's like kind of a trek. Like the surfers at Lake Street, they got to walk like a mile. Just pop them on the back of the buggy with their surfboards and carry them down there.
Oh my
God. Done that a few times.
That's awesome. That's like the dream.
Yeah.
Because I know some guys have those little like carts, to lug their stuff around, but you should set up like a taxi service.
I know, right? They just need the wind in the right direction.
Right.
Then it's, taxi service for sure.
That's awesome. So let's start with maybe a little background on you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, and just right in the city downtown, and really, really close to the beach. So I try to, go out to the lakefront path and go to the beach, walk the dog, that kind of thing. But we always had a place in the Indiana Dunes. So I've been coming out to the Indiana Dunes in Chesterton, Indiana for years, and just would spend summers out there, and just to go sailing and skimboarding. Never really got into surfing, but I did get into more like kiting while I was here, because my dad had like stunt kites, and let me try them all the time. So we'd just practice on the beach when I was a kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you go to school? Did you go to university in Chicago?
Yeah, I went to IIT. I got my master's in environmental management. And went to like grade school and high school in Chicago as well. But I went to like college out east, in upstate New York.
And at what point did you get into kiting? Like more specifically, was it just on the lake or was it somewhere else?
So I got into it I didn't know that there was kiteboarding on Lake Michigan. And when I was out east at school, one of my friends had studied abroad in Australia, and she showed me these pictures of all these kiteboarders in Australia. I was like, that is cool. That was like 2002. And I had since I was kind of like, I still liked kiting, and even in school, I brought my stunt kites with me. I was like, that's cool. I want to try that. So I brought my stunt kite and rollerblades out to like old country road, and was just like trying to make it work, and it didn't work so well. Kite would get stuck in a cornfield, and you have to go fish it out. And then I went on a trip to Cabarete in the Dominican Republic, and I was just there not for kiting, but I was just meeting up with a bunch of buddies to do surfing, waterfall jumping, horseback riding, just all this exploring. And I got there a few days early, and I noticed it was like Cabarete in Dominican Republic was like ground zero at the time for Caribbean kiteboarding. And there's just kiters everywhere. So I took a few lessons and kind of got the hang of it pretty quick, and was like, this is fun. So when I went back home, I was like, I live near a lake. Like, there should be a place to take lessons around Chicago, and found a few instructors. And so did some lessons, and it was kind of tricky with the wind, and I didn't really know what to look for. And I was, I guess, after a long list of students that my instructors had, so I never really had a good chance to get out on the water. So one of my instructors was like, hey, I'm going to be in the Florida Keys, and if anyone can make it down, that'd be cool. And I was like, it was right before New Year's, and I was like, I had some vacation time left at the job I was working. I was like, yeah, I'm going. And so that was like where I really I spent a few days down in the Keys, and that's where I kind of got the hang of it.
And what year was this?
That was I think I took my first lesson 2010, and then 2011, 2012 was when I started to go full steam.
That's so interesting. And what's a stunt kite?
Oh, a stunt kite? It's basically have you ever seen, they're kind of triangle shape, or kind of some are like diamond shape, I guess. And it just, you use straps around your wrists instead of a bar, and you just kind of pull left and right, and the kite just kind of zips and makes a sound, like a fluttering sound, and it goes really fast, and it's really responsive. So it's just more for doing lots of kite loops in a row. You can do 10 kite loops in a row one way, and then the other way, and then kind of dart it around super low to the ground. It was just kind of a fun, kind of power kite activity that would give you a little bit of pull, but not enough to really bring you anywhere.
It's interesting hearing all the different terms, just because I only know, a little bit based on our lesson that we had together. For everybody listening, Tyler lives really close to me, and he gave Andre and I a lesson about 2 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, maybe 3 or
3, yeah, a while ago. So I learned the basics of kiting. It's really interesting. It's just, there's so much equipment, which I think is so fascinating. And what I like about the kiting community is how open everybody is.
Yeah.
And there really is a big push for instructions first. You have to have lessons first. Yeah. and then you can kind of get into it, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think it's one of the few sports where you really need a lesson first, or things can go wrong really quickly. Just putting up the wrong size kite on the wrong day could spell disaster.
When did you get into lessons? How did that start?
I kind of got into it because I've always wanted to, as soon as you get into something you think it's cool, of course you want all your friends to do it, right?
Right.
So I think I since this day I started, before I even knew how to really do it, I wanted to teach. And I quickly realized when I would bring my friends, hey, yeah, you got to come check this out. That was probably 2012. I really thought I knew enough to show people. And I quickly realized that I didn't have the anticipation for what could go wrong before it happened to teach anyone safely.
Hold on one sec.
Oh,
your like hoodie is rubbing on the mic. It's making a really awful sound. If you just like maybe fold your...
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. As I'm like,
Right,
oh God,
better?
what is it? No, that's fine. That's fine.
All right.
It sounds like a loud cricket.
All right. Trying to hold it away.
You should be able to just leave it there now, but it was just because it was like that hard surface, I think.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I hear any other weird sounds.
Sounds good.
But maybe start your story over. I guess I don't remember.
Oh,
you were teaching your friends.
Yeah, I just wanted to teach my friends, and I was actually talking to one of my friends about this, who I tried to teach the other day, because he just like called me out of the blue from picked a name out of the hat of his quarantine buddies he wanted to reach out to, and I came up. But I was like, man, remember when I was like trying to teach you, and then I remember putting this brand new kite I just bought like up in the air. It was like a big 17 meter, which is almost the biggest that they come in. And we were in like a place that was just really tricky to keep the kite in the air. And I remember thinking, man, if something goes wrong, it's gonna pull them too hard, or or the kite's gonna crash on something sharp and break it. And I was like, man, I just don't, I don't know how to teach someone safely. So remember, I was like, thinking, I got to get good at this first before I start teaching people. So I spent a few more years trying to just hone in my skills, and then I ended up working in a kite shop for a little while. And so then I remember just like shipping stuff out at the kite shop, like, man, it'd be nice to do some lessons and kind of get out on the water myself. And so I think I started about seven years ago teaching my first lessons, like officially. And then like about a year or two after that, there's to be like an official kiteboard instructor, you should take a course, and it's called like the IKO kiteboarding certification course, and that stands for International Kiteboarding Organization. And what's nice about it is it gives you a lot of teaching tips, and not only just like how to teach kiteboarding, but just how to teach in general, so you can communicate well with students. And it also standardizes the teaching. So I took that course, and like after that was just like I felt like I really got motivated to teach, and liked it more. And it kind of makes you more confident, and also gives you like an insurance, basically a third-party liability insurance qualification too, so that you can, if someone gets hurt on the beach, you have something to cover you, because there's a lot of things that can happen that are beyond your control. So it's just a little added perk that comes along with like, being serious about being an instructor, and kind of making the leap to pay for a course that'll give you some good guidance.
That's awesome. Was the kiteboarding shop in Chicago that you originally worked in, or?
Yeah, it was on the south side of Chicago, and it was just an online store at the time. The guy was like selling some gear out of his basement, selling it on eBay, which is cool. I was like, yeah, this is a cool way to kind of get started, and fixing kites, and then he started doing some lessons, but it was just kind of a good way to learn more about the industry.
Yeah, I'm sure. What is the kite scene like specifically in Chicago? I'm just curious because for surfing, there's a lot of surfers in Chicago, but most of the beaches you can't surf in Chicago. Is it the same for kiting or different?
Yeah, it's so Chicago is it's a great place to kite on certain days, but it's not really like you're like the best quality kiting unless maybe 5 days a year it's awesome. But so there's one place that you can go kiteboarding, and that's Montrose Beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest beach in Chicago, pretty much. It's also sometimes very crowded, probably most crowded. So there's a lot of rules that you have there, and yeah, there are a lot of kiters there, but never really a lot at once. So I think it was like, I don't know, maybe over 10 years ago, before I started kiting. There were a lot of people that would just go to the beach, and they'd get into the swimming area, or they'd land their kite on, beach goers. So you ended up needing to have like some sort of guidelines for people to go kiting there, and because they actually shut it down at one point. And there was one guy, one of the old timers, Mike Urban, that spent a lot of time with the city to try to reopen kiteboarding in Chicago, and it was successful actually at getting it back. And they said, well, which beaches would you like to have kiteboarding at?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we don't want all the beaches, we just want one, so we can self-police it and make sure everybody you know can preserve it, keep an eye on each other, and make sure that someone who's like, really cocky and thinks they can do all this crazy stuff close to shore and maybe hurt someone, or someone who's a beginner, doesn't know what they're doing and thinks they know what they're doing, maybe knows they shouldn't be there, but there's no rules to keep them out, so they just try anyway. It was just it's just a way to keep everyone out of there who feels like they shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have a lot of self-police rules, as well as some rules that now the lifeguards know about, such as everyone who kites there needs to be IKO certified to a certain level, like level 3. And then if you're IKO certified at level 3 or past a level 2, which is a different certification, you get a streamer that goes on your kite. And so me and a few other people have streamers that can issue them to put on their kites, so that the lifeguards, especially during the swimming season, know that you're legit, like you're allowed to be there. Besides that, like, if someone doesn't have a streamer but they're really good, other people kind of see, okay, he's pretty good, I guess we'll let him go this time. But it's also a way to say, if someone isn't doing too good, or someone is good and they're breaking the rules, it's a way to kick someone out. Say, hey, you don't have a streamer, you got to go.
It's an interesting system.
Yeah. So it's self-policed, and at crowded areas, you sort of need some sort of system in place to preserve the life of the sport in a certain area that's crowded. So I think it works there, but there is a lot of animosity, from people who get kicked out, who know they shouldn't be there, that are angry about it.
Right. Well, I mean, it would make sense. It's like the cocky people that think that they can do whatever, and they're obviously going to get upset when someone tells them that no, they can't do whatever.
Yeah.
And the flags is interesting because, again, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago that there was the meeting that we all went to at the city hall for this kiting issue. Can you maybe talk through that and what that would have looked like if it would have gone forward?
Yeah. So one of the I guess you could call him one of the police at Montrose, also got involved in Michigan City. Not because he was like, oh, this is great, we should implement it here too. He was kind of forced into that by one of the local kiters, who had, I guess, just recently moved to Michigan City and was declaring it his beach, and that if anyone else were to teach there, he was afraid that they were going to make it, put his beach at risk, if something would have happened or whatnot. So every time we would teach there, he would call the Coast Guard. He would call the police and kind of make up stories that we were crashing kites on people and stuff. So the guy I was working for at the time, who ended up talking to the city for about a year, he ended up talking to the city and tried to get it more rules and regulations, kind of to set up so that he had a place where he could teach himself without other people to bother him. So and I think he also tried to have an area where he had cones set up so he can teach and not not have any beachgoers sit there, or other people kind of being in his way. And, I think quickly realized that was not going to fly so well. And also, he also tried to, there's some speculation of if he wanted like to be the only school that was allowed to teach there, which is why I think a lot of people got involved. And there's also some rumors going around that, he wanted to make it like Montrose with streamers, and the locals there did not want that. So, there was just a town hall meeting. And I think he had worked with the parks really hard to get the rights to teach there. And basically, not so that he could just control it, but I think so that, the other local guy who was bothering us for teaching there for so long couldn't bother us anymore. And,
okay.
Yeah.
So the streamers to kind of show also that you know what you're doing, but not have the regulations as far as who can teach there.
Right. And so what ended up happening as a result was, basically if you want to teach at Michigan City going forward, you have to talk to the city or to the Parks and Rec department, and you have to show them that you're like a legit instructor, and then you have to give them percentage of however much you make at the beach. So it just kind of made it more official and sort of weeded out people who didn't take it seriously.
How do you deal with someone who is like a rogue actor, if you will, or someone who maybe doesn't want to take all the lessons, or has the money to buy all the equipment but doesn't want to learn? How does the community deal with that? Because I think that's kind of an interesting conundrum that maybe the traditional surf community doesn't have as much of.
Yeah. So usually what I'll try to do, if I can talk to them first, I kind of lay it down like, yeah, eventually, after enough time, anybody can learn how to do it on their own. But if you don't take a lesson first, you probably won't know what to do if you get in a really bad situation. And if you don't take a lesson first, a really bad situation can happen really fast, like before you can even blink an eye. So, at first you try to like reason with those kind of people, but like let's just say you just see someone on the beach who's doing something that they shouldn't. You have to go talk to them. It doesn't matter if you're a total beginner, you're not even a kiter, and they look like they're doing something dangerous. Someone has to step up and let them know that what they're doing is not okay. So for the most part, it's self-police. And if they're still not listening, talk to the lifeguards. If there's no lifeguards, I mean, you don't want to really call the police on a situation like that. But what a lot of people have done is they get kind of like aggro about it, when they see those kind of people, and they threaten. They say, hey, if you don't put the kite down right now, I'm going to cut your lines. And everyone has a line knife on their harness, and they'll do it.
A line knife. Gosh, it's so hardcore.
Yeah. You should have one. You never know. But, I tell people the line knife isn't for cutting lines necessarily. Sometimes you're at the pier cutting along, and if you get too close to the pier and there's a fisherman with his lines out, you want to be able to cut that line before the hook gets to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow, that's so gnarly.
I know.
How has your business evolved since you started?
It's kind of been like a slow like evolution of just focusing from teaching to providing students with the gear that they need in order to be safe in cold water, all the wetsuit gear, to, also selling kites, kites that I believe would be like the best for teaching with. And then, and then it evolves from like, more just like local, instruction to doing kiteboarding trips. So, I started off just doing kind of local trips, like, tell students like, hey, we're going to South Haven today. Hey, we're going to St. Joe or Sheboygan. And those are just kind of 1-day trips. But then for a while I was going up to Tawas in Lake Huron. And Tawas Point has a really nice sandbar with a really good thermal and a south wind. So like if you go there on the right forecast for a long weekend, you're almost assured to get wind if there's wind nowhere else. Sheboygan has that kind of thermal effect too. So it's nice sometimes to bring a big group up there, have like shallow water where everyone can just like have 2 miles of flat, shallow sandbar just to practice on. But now with the high water levels on Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, that point is kind of head high instead of waist deep like it used to be. So we don't really go there too much anymore. And then started doing like longer trips and to more exotic locations, going to the Outer Banks for a week or two. Key West is a really good spot too to practice. You can take a boat out to these cool sandbars. And we went to Puerto Rico this last winter, and spent a month there with students, just at this really cool flat, shallow water spot, and just had perfect trade winds just about every day. So it's been like a part of the sport that like in the beginning I didn't really think I would like see myself getting into, because I thought, oh man, it's kind of like a travel agent, and then plus you're teaching and trying to like organize everyone and entertain, wherever you can if there's no wind. But it turned out to be just a really fun aspect of the kiteboarding world is like picking up a kite and saying, pointing on the map, like, where do I want to go? Is it near water? Changes the way you look at vacations now. You're like, geez, I really want to go to Florida, but like, where's the good kiteboarding spot? So you end up just like changing the whole way you look at travel. I guess it's just been a slow evolution of like getting more students and different gear to provide them, and then now I'm trying to create like an online store so I can start selling online and not just kind of come in contact with everyone and find out what they need at the time.
That's awesome. And how did you how are you able to sell like retail or sell kites and stuff? Do you have to have like an account set up with a company, or how do you even go about doing that?
Yeah, I guess if you're like a legit business and have a tax ID number, then you can pretty much you can't pick any brand, because I know some brands are like, hey, you need to you have to have a shop, or you have to or you can't be too close to someone else who's selling the same thing. So you just kind of have to find out what kind of brands you like the best and you believe in, and then just kind of hope that they'll cater to your kind of business and what you do.
That's cool. It's cool to be a one-stop shop, because obviously anybody, if they get the bug from you, from getting the lessons from you, then they can just get all of the gear that you recommend.
Yeah. And that's what's kind of nice about it is, it's just like, I always like, whenever I go to, a lesson and someone needs something, I usually have like 2 of every size of everything. Just so if someone needs something, I'll have it, I'll have it in stock. And as soon as I don't have 2 of something, I just get 2 more. So it's just something that like a nice service where, no one's going to be cold in the water because I didn't have the right size gloves for them or something like that. And in addition to that, I'll also have like some rental options that they could use if I don't at the time have something that they need, because they're like an odd size or whatnot.
When after a student takes their first lesson from you, or first couple of lessons, are they continuing on taking more advanced lessons? Do most people do that, or do they kind of like take a beginner lesson and then go on their own way? How does that work?
Yeah. So I think most students will continue on. They'll do like, if they're serious about it, they do like, an 8-hour package. They sign up for the whole thing, which really gives them the fundamentals they need, as well as different days to go out with different conditions, because every day on Lake Michigan seems to be different. If you go someplace where it's the same wind every day, you can kind of master it a lot quicker. But then when you go someplace with different wind or different wave conditions, you're like, whoa, I'm not ready for this. This is not what I expected. But on Lake Michigan, you get everything thrown at you within that 8-hour package. You'll have a high wind day. You'll have a light wind day. You'll have just like a perfect flat, butter smooth, medium wind day. So what I've noticed is if you're, oh wow, there's a coyote outside the window. That's pretty cool. Yeah. But if you, if you just sign up for like kind of
Are you
an intro.
your hair, Katie?
Yeah, she's looking for the coyote. But if you want to I guess just like get a quick intro, then you only get like one condition. But if you really are serious, you'll pretty much have all the fundamentals you need to get into it.
Sorry, that was so distracting.
I know. Every time I see that coyote outside, I'm like, whoa. Is it?
No, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I know Dee Dee has all different sorts of critters.
I know.
At that house.
Yeah. So she feeds them.
I know. Yeah, because for me, that is one of the kind of, I think, starting kiteboarding versus starting surfing, there's such maybe a steeper learning curve because there's so much equipment and so much variance in almost every aspect, where surfing, I don't know how to maybe articulate this, but surfing, it's kind of like you pop up and then you kind of can turn, and there's kind of like a progression that's a little bit more in one direction. But with kiting, it seems like there's so many different types of kites that affect, how you are going to use your equipment. There's so much, just from my perspective, there's so much more to learn right from the beginning. That's how I felt when I was taking the lesson. I just think it's really interesting.
Yeah, there's like a lot of like what you said, there's a lot of gear involved, and there's also a lot of it's like not homework, but like kind of safety stuff you need to learn. And in the beginning, there's so much, it seems a little bit overwhelming. But then as soon as you kind of go through the motions and have some hands-on training with it, it becomes second nature. So it doesn't seem quite as intimidating. And then, what's intimidating, I guess, in the beginning is like, for a surfer, I know, is you've got to set up this big kite, and there's all these lines, and they can get tangled, and it takes up so much space, and like, you're already concerned about space, right? So you're trying to, you're catching all the same waves at some point, you're like, God. But the difference, I think, is there's a lot more upfront learning and gear for kite surfing, but as soon as you kind of know all that, then all of a sudden, like, the water opens up to this like really nice freedom of like, you're just able to navigate in this huge open space, and how to kind of get around other people, and instead of people getting in your way, you kind of feel like a camaraderie with them, like, oh cool, like, did you feel that too? Like, that wind was awesome, or those waves are so good, so you get the same kind of similar feelings, but you're also just like, you can space out as much as you want and not really worry about it.
Right. Makes sense too. Why I feel not to knock the surfing community, obviously. Love our surfers, love our surfer community, but there is definitely a more chill vibe amongst, like, in between kiters, is what I have seen, at least from my experience. Maybe it's because, like, the wind, it's so vast, there's not just like one good area. It seems that way, at least.
Yeah.
Like if the wind is blowing, it's blowing.
Right. Yeah. True.
What is the optimal conditions? Because I heard you talk about like shallow water. Is that better for some reason?
Yeah, I think as a beginner, it's better. If you have flat, shallow water, you don't have to worry about, losing your board and having to body drag back to it. You don't have to worry about waves hitting you in the face as you're learning how to do the beginner body dragging things. But as you get more advanced, flat water is nice. You can do all kinds of tricks, and there's a whole category of cool freestyle tricks you can do in flat water and hooked in tricks, doing big air. But I've found in my progression, I kind of like to have waves more. So, then you can get on your surfboard, or you can just even ride with your twin tip, or even ride some like smaller waves with your foil board, and just kind of feel the power of the wave, or to get a nice clean turn on it. And so when it's kind of choppy out there and you're like getting kind of sick of it, you just kind of head into the waves, and you finally get your smooth, surfaces that you can play on.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. It's so cool. So let's maybe list all the different ways that you can use a kite.
Okay.
Because you have,
yeah.
Because I know that you have kiteboarding, snow kiting, which is using a kite on a snowboard or skis.
Mm-hmm.
The buggy thing that you were talking about.
Yeah.
What else? Roller skates, it seems like when you were a kid.
Roller kiting, yep. And actually, I've taught a lot of people on just with the trainer kite. It's a 2-line kite, and rollerblades. It's just if you're already good on skates, it's just a really easy way to figure out how to angle yourself in relation to the kite to get a constant pull and to go somewhere on it. It kind of teaches you the motions much easier than being in the water and feeling like you're getting pushed around in circles by the waves.
Yeah, that's cool. Are those the main ways?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, there might be a few more creative ways. You could be on a longboard too with a trainer kite. Yeah, and what I've noticed is being on a longboard is a little harder than rollerblades, but if you sit on the longboard, you kind of start that way, and that's a pretty easy way to get the hang of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then if you feel like you're going too fast or getting pulled too hard, you just let go of the bar, and there's a leash connected to your wrist, so you can let it go, and the kite will just kind of, we'll call it flagging out, just turn, kind of flops until it comes down lightly on the ground.
You have traveled quite a bit. Can you maybe, I don't know, where was the first place that you went ever, like traveling abroad?
Oh, traveling, like not for kiting, but for
both.
for just in general. Oh, okay. So the first place I went for kiteboarding was the Dominican Republic, and then I went to a few years later when I finally felt like I was intermediate. I went to the Grenadines. There's this really cool island called Union Island. There's like a little like kiting pro shop called the JT Pro Center, and so that's like the home base for kiteboarding in the Grenadines. Then you can take ferries or boats or sail. If you could charter a sailboat and go to like different islands around there, like I think Meru is one, and Salt Whistle Bay, and then the Tobago Cays, and it's just you get this beautiful turquoise water with turtles swimming around you, surrounded by a protected reef. And it's just one of those perfect photo shoots where you're just like, wow, this is what paradise looks like, So that was a really cool trip. Oh yeah, and like if you go during a full moon, the pro there puts on a show. He wears like LED pants, and puts a bonfire in the kiting spot, and at night, while he's having like a big barbecue with all the locals and all the sailors who all come, he'll put on a show and do all these advanced kiting moves. And he'll bonk the bonfire. He'll take like girls on his back, kite with them, and he'll do like what's called like dark slides and Jesus walking. You take the board off and just kind of walk on the water, weightless while he's maneuvering the kite to keep him up. All with those like bright white LED pants, and it's just so cool. Everyone's like, "What? This is surreal," and it's so bright out there in the full moon that he can see perfectly fine. And we just kind of see him do all these tricks in front of the bonfire. So he puts on a good show. He's also a good DJ.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So, yeah, that was a fun trip. And then probably my favorite trips I've done is I used to go to Brazil every year. So I went there for 3 years in a row, and we would do what's called the endless downwinder. And we'd basically kite about 500 miles of Brazilian coastline, go from fishing village to fishing village every day. And just like, maybe go like 30 to like 80 miles a day, and just kind of stop along a hut. You can find like a small shack along the beach, and then just get like fresh lobster, like delivered right to you then while your kite's sitting there. And then just go back out and do another 30 miles, end up at sunset at another fishing village, and a buggy will come pick you up, bring you to it's called posadas, your small posada, and just spend a night there, maybe spend like 1 or 2 days in each spot. And the buggies will pick you up so you can redo the downwinder again, just in case you missed a good wave, you have to go back to it. But that's just an awesome like bucket list trip that like everybody who gets into kiting should consider, because the winds there blow like 30 knots, 25 to like 35 knots actually. The winds get stronger the further north you go. So like the first week it's blowing like 25 knots, and then the second week when you get higher up it's blowing like 30, 35 knots. And so you can just use a small kite and just ride these awesome waves the whole way, and it's just so much fun to be on a smaller kite, because then you can move it faster and you can catch the wave in like a sweeter spot sooner. So it's just an epic journey.
That sounds incredible. So do you keep all of your stuff? What about your like actual belongings? Are they with you?
No, so a lot of people would bring like a camel pack with them.
Okay.
And then everything else just kind of goes in the buggies that are following you. So you have to hire like a buggy driver, but if split it between 4 or 5 people, it brings the price down. And but we did run into some people who would just like hire like a local kid and local kiter kid, and just bring like a few basic belongings in like a kite bag on their backpack, like a pump, maybe like some water, and like a change of clothes, and they would just kind of bum around and just camp out, maybe a hammock or under their kite for the night, and then they just keep going the next day, basically till they run out of steam. Go as far as they can go.
That's what I pictured in my head. I pictured like, I don't know why, but I pictured like you guys kiting with like your backpacks and stuff like all the way down. That's pretty hardcore.
Yeah, well, trust me, the thought has crossed my mind, and
right.
Like this last year, I was like, oh, we should do it. I was talking to a buddy, and then I don't know, it didn't materialize. But one day, I think that's on the bucket list now, because I know that place like the back of my hand now, and I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. Just gotta get used to sleeping in a hammock.
Right. Oh man, that's like the dream almost, like the nomadic surfer kiteboarder kind of dream. Like no plans, just get out there. Whatever happens, happens. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's just it's more of a pure way to do it than having like a car follow you.
Where else have you been?
Let's see. I guess like for international, I think that's all I've been. But some cool spots that I've been to that are also great for the U.S. is like Hood River, Oregon. It's really cool there because the wind like snakes down a river like it'll be going north and then it'll be coming south, and it's all because of the mountain and the thermals and the heat, gradients from the top of the mountains to the to the valleys, and then to the desert to the east, to like the snow-capped mountains in the west. So there's all these like thermals and mountain like inversions happening that creates that kind of wind, and it gets really strong for most of the summer. Then I had like a really good time. I went out to LA and found out that, like, it's the wind there is kind of weird. You get a lot of eddy effects like around the the coastline, but once it comes in, it comes in and the waves get big, and it's can be a lot of fun. So yeah, we did like a fun downwinder one day to from Belmont Shores to Huntington Beach, and God, the waves were just awesome. It was just cool to see that part of the country, because never really thought of kiting in that area, but it can be pretty good at times.
That's awesome. And so when you're out in the waves, are you wanting to surf like this same face of the wave as like a surfer would want to, or are you further back, or what, like how are you incorporating the waves into the kiting?
The way I do it, I kind of just, instead of doing like a drop in from like the backside, I always approach it from the front, from like the face. And so what's nice about the kite is you can approach the wave and you can just smack the lip just like you would once you're already on the wave and you're riding it with the shortboard. But as soon as you smack the lip, you can stall out the kite and then you drop in. So it's not like, paddling from the back. It's like you approach it from the front, smack the lip, and then you stall the kite out a little bit, you drop in, and then you can hit it. You can just keep hitting it again as long as there's still, a nice face. But it's not really the same. As you can get a nice drop into it and then kind of ride it like with speed. But if you ride it with too much speed towards the kite can it can like backstall, and then just you won't have any tension on the line, and your kite goes down in the wave, and that's something you don't want to happen. So you sort of just like, you do these power turns into the wave, you smack the lip, drop in, hit it again. You kind of just do that repetitive motion. And then I guess you can also let the kite sort of drift, and you can hit the wave a few times, like as if you're riding it without a kite. But then you don't want to get that slack.
Yeah. So you're basically just like carving, and you're just going straight to the carving because you already have the momentum of the kite. You don't need the drop in momentum to propel you forward.
Right. Yeah, you can just generate that extra, that power from the kite to stay on the wave and stay in the sweet spot.
That's awesome. I'm just like trying to picture it in my head, but I know that I've seen it done before, because I mean there are rare occasions that the wind is good and the waves are also good.
Right.
Even though it is kind of rare on the lake, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when it's like a really big day on the lake, the waves usually get really good, and it's a good direction, because we're always like behind the jetty, just like the surfers. And yeah, I mean, those are the awesome days that like you live for on like Michigan, when it's blowing like 30, 40, 50, and you can get on a small kite and the waves they just get real big.
Yeah.
Even if there's not much fetch, in the lake. So I don't know, it can be fun. And you get some pretty clean waves at times too.
Where are you predominantly kiting? Like, what's your spot on the lake?
So we sort of cover most of southern Lake Michigan, for at least where I do lessons. So we'll go from South Haven down to St. Joe, Michigan City, Lake Street, and then Waukegan in Illinois, occasionally Wolf Lake in the spring a lot, and then up to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, where they get that thermal, which is just awesome on the south during the summer. So we cover most of those spots, and recently we've kind of been heading up to Muskegon too, because they get a really nice northwest wind thermal, which like, and it's closer than Sheboygan for me. So, it's kind of nice to hit that spot up in the middle of summer. So, yeah, those are the main areas. But, as far as like the most fun spot, I would say like kind of right where we are, at the Indiana Dunes Lakeshore, because right now there's still beach for most of the way. And you can do these epic downwinders along that shoreline from all the way from Porter Beach to Beverly Shores, just all that, there's nothing in the way, no rock walls or retaining walls or, trees down. It's just like pure Indiana Dunes coastline for a nice little 7-mile downwinder. So that's my favorite spot.
Yeah. It's a good spot down here for surfing and for kiting. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Underrated, I would say.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something special about the dunes too. And it's cool because even if it's a day when I can't surf, it's cool to see how many kiters there will be out. I feel like you guys kind of travel in packs. I don't usually see like just one kiter. There's usually like 10. Yeah.
Oh, part of that is like the rule that like, I try to stress is never kite alone. You always want to have someone there in case something happens as security. But also, we all talk to each other and we want to know like, where someone else is going, because it is, like, I have kite alone like before, and it's almost not the same as like having someone to share it with afterwards, and like hang out in the parking lot. You get like, I guess I'll use the term stoke, but you just like, it's different, coming off of a session and having someone to like talk about it with, and just kind of going home just feeling good on your, by yourself. So we just, even if like people would never have been friends before, like just kiting just totally brings them together to a whole new plane.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was your biggest oh shit moment while kiting? Like things got gnarly.
Yeah. So I think I guess the biggest one was on one of my downwinders in Brazil. So I was with two of my other friends, and we were waiting for one guy who's kind of taking his time. Call it whale watching. He was out looking for whales. It just means you take off so you can hardly see him, and then he comes back like a few minutes or 5 minutes later, like, dude, where were you? It's like, oh yeah, I was just way out there and 3 miles offshore. But at that point, we were going across the bay, and we were 2 miles offshore. Even from there. So my friend decided he was gonna like, I don't know, practice a new kite trick in the middle of this bay, and he ended up losing his kite. And so it's, we call it the angry kite. It was 30 knots and the thing just tumbling down. There was no way we were going to get it. It was angry. So I ended up having to, I was going to drag him in, but I was like, it might be easier for him to drag me. So we switched kites, and he dragged me 2 miles to shore, and he dropped me off right outside of this wave break. And, we didn't really know what the topography looked like before we got there. And so I'm like, no big deal. I'm on a surfboard, right? I'll just kind of ride it in. But when you kiteboard, most people don't have leashes on their boards, on their surfboards. So I'm just kind of holding on to it like a boogie board. And these waves were like massive, and they were all closing out like mean closeout waves. And I was like stuck on the outside of this break. Like, how am I going to get in? So I'm like, okay, not taking that one. Had to duck dive a few to get back out. And then was like, okay, I got to get way in front of it and just kind of ride the foam in, or I'll just get tumbled. So, after 2 waves, I was like frantically paddling to make it to shore. But the shoreline was like so steep. It was sand, but it was so steep. There's like an undertow sucking me back in every time. Yeah. And I was like, man, I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it. And so luckily I just paddled my heart out, and right as I ran out of steam completely, I could touch. And so like I got to the beach, my buddies were like, like no big deal. Like looked like he was having fun. But I was just like laying on the beach like, I'm alive. That was the hardest paddle I've had in my life. So yeah, that was probably the scariest moment I had, because I was really, nervous. Like, so then after I got there, we were like, okay, well now we'll go get his kite because it'll end up on the shore. And it sure did end up at the shore, but the waves, like, it ate it up, and it didn't even spit it back out. Like, it munched that kite and like kept it because that shore break was so steep. So that was a little bit scary.
Do kiters have to worry about sharks?
Yeah. I mean, they don't really. They don't worry about them much.
Yeah,
but
okay.
like, there's this dude, Tom, I forget his last name, but he kites out of Delray Beach, Florida. And when there's that shark migration going on, like I think it's in the spring, they're all going north to feed. There's just thousands of them. Like every mile, there's like 1,000 sharks every square mile. And like this dude will like kind of go out there and cruise right over them. Like it's no big deal. Tom Lehman, I think his name is. It's like, dude, you got guts, man, because there's no way I would do that.
That's hardcore. Yeah, that's so hardcore. What is the weirdest wave you've ever surfed or kited? I ask that question to everybody, but
yeah. Well, I kind of have two, and not because like they were weird waves, but I guess like the feeling from being on the wave is like just totally crazy. So I guess the first one was like, I guess just as I was a beginner, it was like the first time I really like felt the Stoke kiteboarding, and I was going in between these two waves, and there's just like the way like the sun was shining like between the clouds onto the waves, and they're just this perfect shape, this glassy shape, and just like heading down the line, underneath the wave. I was like, wow, like what is that? What is that feeling? And it was like a high that like lasted for like the next 10 hours or something. And like I got it, like I remember on my way back home, I got a speeding ticket. It was going like 88 and a 70. And it was like I was so high at that point from that Stoke, I like didn't even care, It was just like, yeah, it's no big deal, Like I'm not letting this ruin my feeling. Yeah, that was in Tiscornia Park in St. Joe, or Benton Harbor officially, but the other one was in St. Joe. And I remember just like you just get in these. I got in like this monster swell that was wrapping around the pier, and I just remember like being at the base of this swell, looking up like, wow, like I'm so small to the size of this wave. And it was this like religious experience where I was like, like I'm so small and like minuscule to like the power of nature, and it just made you feel like so humble and like gracious to be on this earth,
Totally.
So I guess, yeah.
I do think that there's something so, and who knows if it's like religious or whatever it is, but it's like connects you and grounds you from the water sports that we do. Because I can think of a couple of times when I was surfing too, where I'm just like, I am literally a speck on the whole planet, when you're just like sitting out, and especially if you can't see the other side, the body of water, if you're just sitting on the one side and you just look out and it's just so vast, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just this big, just like baby small. It's like very like humbling.
Yeah, it's like mind-blowing bewilderment. You're just like, I am so small in this world. This is a huge powerful like world. It's crazy.
It is crazy, and it kind of like makes everything zero in at the same time. I don't know if you had that experience. But it's like, kind of makes things that you thought they matter less, all because you were like a tiny speck trying to ride a wave.
Yeah. I know, that makes total sense. Yeah.
I love that. I do. That's one of my favorite things about the sport that we both enjoy, is just the feeling of small. That's cool. My last question for you is, what is next for you?
Well, next, I guess, what really excites me is the prospect of like going to see new places and kiting in new places around the world and even around the U.S. Um, and being able to fund that by growing the business, and we created an online store. We're in the process of doing that, so we can offer more equipment to more people around the country. And so I think that'll really help, and even on that site to advertise trips to where we're going next. So it's not just the same places every time. You can really see the world and discover a new culture. Not just kind of just go to a place to only kite, but to have so much more than that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
They can go to my website at stokeriders.com, STOKERIDERS. And or they can reach out on Instagram or Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thanks for talking to me. This was so great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show or the podcast.
And that was episode 37. I really hope that you guys enjoy it. Tyler is building an awesome new website, and I will link that below. You can hit him up for any lessons or any more information. He's a super open guy. He would love to answer any of your questions. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you're all healthy, happy, and doing well, and we will see you next Monday for another episode.